Eleanor stood at the edge of the cliff, her eyes wide with disbelief. The wind howled around her, tearing at her hair as her heart shattered into pieces. Aiden had been taken, vanished into the night, stolen away by Duke Malvyn. She reached out, desperate to feel his presence once more, but the air was empty. "I will find you, Aiden," she whispered, her voice trembling. The distant echo of hooves thundered, and the last trace of his figure faded into the darkness. Her hands shook, and the cold air burned her skin, but it wasn't the chill of the night that froze her. It was the weight of the curse now binding them, a bond that could either save or destroy them both. She turned and hurried down the path, her mind spinning with fear and confusion. "I have no choice. I must face what I am," she whispered again, her footsteps growing louder, determined yet terrified. As Eleanor trudged through the storm, her thoughts swirled in a chaotic dance. "Where do I even begin?" she whispered, wiping the rain from her brow. The path ahead seemed endless, but she couldn't turn back now. Not when Aiden needed her. Her heart clenched at the thought of him, locked away in Duke Malvyn's cold fortress, and she knew the only way to save him was to confront the magic she had always feared. "Master Orion will know," she murmured, her steps quickening as she thought of her mentor. She had to reach him. She had to learn what she was capable of. After hours of walking, Eleanor finally arrived at the small cottage deep within the forest. The firelight inside flickered softly through the windows, a welcoming contrast to the relentless storm outside. She knocked urgently on the door, her heart pounding. Moments later, Master Orion opened the door, his weathered face grim but familiar. "Eleanor, you shouldn't be here. The storm is fierce, and I need your help," she interrupted, her voice trembling. "Aiden's been taken. I don't know what to do. Please, tell me what I am." Master Orion studied her for a long moment before nodding. "You have much to learn, but there is no time to waste. Come inside quickly." Eleanor followed him inside, her mind racing with fear and hope. This was it, the beginning of her true journey. Inside, Master Orion motioned for Eleanor to sit at the table where an ancient book lay open. "You're not just any ordinary person," he began, his voice low. "There is power within you, but it has been dormant, waiting for the right moment to awaken." Eleanor looked at him, confusion clouding her eyes. "Power? I don't understand." Orion sighed. "The magic you carry is ancient, tied to your bloodline. It is the only thing that can save Aiden, and perhaps the world itself. But first you must learn to control it." Eleanor clenched her fists, a mix of fear and resolve settling in her chest. "Teach me," she said, her voice stronger now. "I'll do whatever it takes." Orion nodded, closing the book. "Then, we begin at dawn." As dawn broke, Eleanor stood in front of a circle of glowing runes, the air around her charged with an unfamiliar energy. Master Orion's voice echoed in her mind, guiding her through the process. "Focus, Eleanor. Feel the magic within you. It's in your blood, in every heartbeat." She closed her eyes, breathing deeply. The world around her seemed to fade as a warmth spread through her chest. For the first time, she felt the power stirring inside her, raw, untamed, and ready to explode. A burst of energy shot from her hands, sending ripples through the air. "You've just touched the surface," Master Orion said, his voice a mixture of awe and caution. "There is much more to come, but be careful. This power can either save you or destroy everything you love." Eleanor couldn't believe what she was hearing. Flynn, her longtime ally, had betrayed them, siding with Duke Malvyn. "I had no choice," Flynn said, his voice laced with guilt. "You don't understand. Malvyn has power. He promised me everything." Eleanor's heart sank. She had trusted him. The room, once a sanctuary, now felt cold and empty. Master Orion stood by, silent, as if weighing his own thoughts. Kieran, her protector, clenched his fists in fury. "We cannot let this betrayal stand," he growled. But Eleanor, fighting back tears, knew the danger they were in. "Flynn, why? Why did you do this?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Flynn's eyes darted away, his shame too great to meet her gaze. "I thought I was protecting you," he mumbled. But it was too late. Eleanor turned away, her heart heavier than ever. "Then protect us now," she said, her words filled with determination. Master Orion guided Eleanor through the ancient texts, explaining the magic that surged within her. "Your bloodline carries the power of the ancients," he said. "But you must learn to control it, or it will control you." Eleanor listened intently, the weight of his words sinking in. She had always been afraid of her abilities, but now, with Aiden's life hanging in the balance, there was no room for fear. She would have to become stronger, faster, smarter. But Kieran's warning echoed in her mind. "Don't forget who you're fighting." Malvyn wasn't just after Aiden, he was after something far more dangerous, something connected to Eleanor's magic. "I won't fail," she vowed, determination lighting her eyes. Master Orion nodded gravely. "Let's begin then." Eleanor's first attempt to control the magic was disastrous. The energy surged from her hands in an uncontrolled burst, knocking over the bookshelves and sending a wave of heat through the room. "Focus, Eleanor," Master Orion shouted, but it was too late. Eleanor collapsed to her knees, exhausted. Kieran rushed to her side, lifting her up. "You're pushing yourself too hard," he warned. "You're not ready for this." But Eleanor's determination remained unshaken. "I can't afford to wait. Aiden needs me." Master Orion watched silently. "You cannot rush magic," he said. "It will break you if you do." Eleanor nodded, sweat dripping down her face, her body trembling from the strain. "I'll get it right," she whispered. "I have to." The tension between Eleanor and Kieran grew as the days passed. She was pushing herself harder than ever, ignoring Kieran's warnings. "You're not just putting yourself at risk," he said one evening. "You're pushing me away." Eleanor stopped, her back to him. "I'm not asking you to understand. I'm doing this for Aiden." Kieran's voice softened. "I know, but you can't fight this alone." Eleanor turned to face him, her eyes filled with both frustration and fear. "I don't have a choice. Aiden needs me, and I can't fail him." Kieran reached out, his hand touching hers gently. "Then let me help," he said. "You don't have to carry this burden alone." For a moment, Eleanor felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to do this alone after all. With Kieran's help, Eleanor began to make progress. They trained together each day, mastering control over her magic. But one evening as the sun set, Master Orion came to them with grim news. "Duke Malvyn is moving. He plans to take Aiden to his fortress in the north," he said, his voice thick with concern. Eleanor's heart clenched. "We're running out of time," she whispered. "I am ready," Kieran said, his resolve firm. Eleanor nodded, her gaze hardening. "We go tonight." As they prepared, the weight of their mission settled over them. This wasn't just about saving Aiden anymore. It was about stopping Malvyn before he could use the power that lay within her. Eleanor stood at the edge of the cliff, the wind biting against her skin. She had come this far, and yet the magic within her remained untamed, unpredictable. "I'm not ready," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Aiden's fate rests on your shoulders," Kieran reminded her, his expression stoic yet filled with concern. The weight of his words settled like a stone in her chest. "What if I can't control it?" Eleanor asked, fear lacing her tone. Kieran stepped closer, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. "Then we'll face it together," he said, his voice soft yet unwavering. Eleanor met his gaze, her heart torn between doubt and the desperate need to save Aiden. "I won't fail," she promised, even though the uncertainty lingered in her eyes. Master Orion's voice echoed in the quiet of the forest as he led Eleanor and Kieran to a hidden clearing. "This is where your training will begin," he said, gesturing to the array of glowing symbols in the dirt. Eleanor stood still, her eyes wide with awe. "This is where you must learn to harness your power," Orion explained, his voice calm but serious. "If you fail, the consequences could be dire." Eleanor nodded, taking a deep breath. She had no choice but to succeed. As she stepped into the circle, The air around her seemed to hum with energy. "Focus, Eleanor," Kieran whispered from the sidelines, his gaze intense. She closed her eyes, centering herself, and began the process of summoning the magic within. Eleanor's first attempt to channel her magic ended in chaos. A burst of energy erupted from her hands, sending a shockwave through the forest. Trees cracked and splintered as the ground trembled beneath her feet. "No!" she cried, her arms trembling from the effort. Master Orion rushed to her side, his expression grim. "You must focus your mind, Eleanor," he said. "Magic is not simply a force, it's an extension of your will. You must control it, or it will consume you." Eleanor stood, panting, her mind racing. She had seen the power she was capable of, but it was uncontrolled, dangerous. "I can't do it," she murmured, her voice thick with frustration. Kieran stepped forward, his hand on her arm. "You will," he said, his voice steady, reminding her of the path ahead. The next day, Eleanor and Kieran trained together, pushing each other harder than before. With every step, Eleanor felt herself growing stronger, more attuned to the magic within. But despite their progress, doubt still lingered in her mind. "What if it's not enough?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if we're too late?" Kieran stopped, turning to face her. "We can't afford to think like that," he said, his voice firm. "If we don't believe we can do this, we might as well give up now." Eleanor looked into his eyes, the fierce determination in his gaze, sparking something within her. "I'm not giving up," she said, her voice steady. "I'll do whatever it takes." As they neared Duke Malvyn's fortress, the mood grew heavier. The once vibrant forest had given way to barren land, the air thick with the scent of decay. Eleanor's heart pounded in her chest as she looked at the towering structure ahead. "We're here," she said, her voice tight. "Are you ready?" Kieran asked, his gaze fixed on the fortress. Eleanor nodded, though uncertainty still lingered. "I have to be." The plan was simple: get inside, find Aiden, and stop Malvyn's scheme before it was too late. But as they neared the entrance, a figure appeared in the shadows. "You've come for him, haven't you?" the figure asked, his voice chilling. Eleanor's heart skipped a beat. She recognized him immediately. Elias, the fallen hero, now standing between them and their goal. Elias stood before them, his once warm eyes now cold, filled with bitterness. "You've come to stop me," he said, his voice low and hoarse. Eleanor's heart clenched. "Elias, why?" she whispered, unable to comprehend the depth of his transformation. "You were one of us." Elias's lips curled into a bitter smile. "I was, but no more. Power changed me, Eleanor, and now it's your turn." Kieran stepped forward, his hand on the hilt of his sword. "You're still the man we knew. Don't do this." Elias laughed, a hollow, cruel sound. "It's too late for redemption, Kieran." His eyes flickered to Eleanor. "And you, Eleanor, you've become what I feared." Eleanor felt the sting of his words, but she refused to back down. "You may have fallen, Elias, but I will save Aiden." Elias shook his head, his gaze distant. "The question isn't whether you can save him, but whether you can save yourself." With that, the confrontation began. The fight between Elias and Kieran was swift, each strike charged with years of hidden tension. But Eleanor couldn't tear her eyes away from Elias. She had once loved him, and it tore at her heart to see him like this. "Elias, please," she cried, stepping forward. "Come back to us." But Elias's eyes only darkened further. "You don't understand, Eleanor," he said through gritted teeth. "I was never truly one of you. I was a tool. Now I'm in control." Kieran's blade clashed against Elias's, sparks flying from the force of the blow. "You're blinded by your own darkness," Kieran spat, struggling to hold his ground. Eleanor's heart ached, but she knew she had to act. "Elias, you still have a choice," she shouted, holding out her hand. "Come back to us, please." Elias hesitated, his eyes flickering with conflict, but the moment passed, and the battle raged on. The battle escalated, each of them driven by their own personal demons. Elias fought with fury, while Kieran's strikes grew more calculated, aiming for a way to end the fight without killing him. But then, as if driven by something beyond reason, Elias turned his sword on Kieran. "You never understood what I had to sacrifice," he screamed, his voice raw with pain. Kieran parried the blow, but the force sent him stumbling back. Eleanor rushed forward, her voice shaking as she called out to them both. "Stop! This isn't the way!" The world around her seemed to freeze. Elias, his breathing heavy and uneven, looked back at her, his eyes filled with confusion. "You think I can go back?" he asked, his voice trembling. "After everything I've done?" Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "We can still fix this, Elias. It's never too late." But Elias only lowered his sword, the anger in his eyes fading to emptiness. "I don't know how to fix this anymore," he murmured. Elias lowered his sword, the fight seemingly leaving him, but Kieran remained cautious, his stance still defensive. "It's not over," Kieran muttered, his chest heaving. "He could turn on us at any moment." But Eleanor shook her head, stepping closer to Elias. "No, he's still the man we knew. We just have to remind him of who he is." Elias looked up, his eyes clouded with uncertainty. I don't know how to go back," he whispered. "Everything I've done." His voice trailed off, and Eleanor could see the guilt gnawing at him. "You don't have to go back to who you were," she said softly, her voice filled with compassion. "You can be who you are now, free of Malvyn's control." Elias's eyes met hers, a flicker of hope in them for the first time. Maybe I can," he whispered, dropping his sword to the floor with a clatter. Elias's redemption was not instant. It took time for him to reconcile with his past and the man he had become. But in that time, Eleanor and Kieran never gave up on him. As they moved forward, they found themselves standing at the edge of the fortress, ready for whatever came next. "We're not done yet," Kieran said, his voice firm. Eleanor nodded. "But we're closer than ever." Elias, standing between them, was a reminder of what could be salvaged, even when hope seemed lost. "I don't know how to make up for everything," Elias admitted, his voice raw. "But I'll fight for you. For us." Eleanor smiled, a sense of peace settling within her. "That's all we can ask for," she said, her gaze looking toward the horizon, where the first rays of dawn began to break. Lyra appeared from the shadows, her eyes gleaming with an unreadable expression. "You've come far, but you still don't understand the game you're playing," she said, her voice dripping with a mysterious calm. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "What do you want?" she demanded, her hand instinctively moving to her sword. Lyra smirked, her figure shifting in the dim light. "I don't want anything from you, Eleanor," she replied cryptically. "But I can offer you something, truths you've been blind to." Kieran stepped forward, wary. "Don't listen to her," he warned, but Eleanor was already intrigued. "What truths?" Eleanor asked, her voice tinged with both suspicion and curiosity. Lyra's smile deepened. "The truth about Aiden, about your destiny, about everything." Eleanor hesitated, the weight of her decisions pressing down on her. "Tell me," she said, knowing this could change everything. Lyra's words hung in the air as she revealed what no one had dared to say. "Aiden isn't just a victim. He's part of something far greater, a piece of a prophecy that could either save or destroy everything." Eleanor's heart raced. "No, he can't be," she whispered, unable to comprehend the gravity of what Lyra was suggesting. Kieran moved closer, his face tight with worry. "Don't listen to her lies," he warned. But Lyra only smiled, a look of knowing on her face. "It's not a lie, Kieran. It's destiny. And you've all been playing your part in it without even realizing." Eleanor turned to Kieran, her expression torn. "Could it be true?" she asked, voice shaking. Kieran's jaw clenched, but before he could respond, Lyra stepped closer. "The truth will come, whether you want it or not," she said softly, her eyes gleaming with an unsettling certainty. Eleanor felt the weight of Lyra's words press down on her. "What if she's right?" Eleanor whispered to Kieran, her voice filled with fear. Kieran looked at her, his face softening. Even if it's true, it doesn't change what we have to do. We have to save Aiden, no matter the cost. Eleanor nodded, but doubt gnawed at her. How can I trust you? She asked Lyra, stepping forward. Lyra met her gaze, her expression unreadable. Because I know the truth, Lyra replied, her voice steady. And the truth is, Aiden will either be your salvation or your destruction. You must decide which. Eleanor turned away, her thoughts swirling. Kieran's hand rested gently on her shoulder. We'll face whatever comes together, he assured her. Eleanor looked back at him, her heart heavy with the burden of what lay ahead. Then, let's do this. The group set out under the cover of darkness, the weight of their mission heavy on their shoulders. We can't waste any more time, Kieran said, his voice low and serious. Eleanor nodded, her determination setting in. We'll move fast. We need to find Aiden before Malvyn does something irreversible. The air was thick with tension as they moved through the forest, the night shrouding them in its darkness. The closer we get to Malvyn's stronghold, the more dangerous it will become, Kieran warned. Lyra, trailing behind them, spoke up. I've seen the stronghold's defenses. We'll need more than just stealth to get through. Eleanor turned to face her. Then tell us what we need to do, she urged. Lyra's eyes glinted in the dark. Trust me, and I'll show you. As they approached the stronghold, Eleanor could feel the tension in the air. This is it, she whispered, her voice tense. The fortress loomed ahead, dark and foreboding, its high walls bathed in the glow of torchlight. Kieran, ever vigilant, looked around. We'll need to find an opening. Once we're inside, there's no turning back. Lyra stepped forward, her eyes scanning the wall. I know a way in, she said, her voice cold. But you'll have to trust me. Eleanor glanced at Kieran, who nodded reluctantly. Let's move, Eleanor said, her voice steady despite the fear that threatened to consume her. They made their way toward the fortress, each step heavy with the uncertainty of what awaited them inside. Eleanor stood at the entrance of the hidden chamber, her heart pounding as Lyra stepped forward. This is where it all changes, Lyra said, her voice cold and ominous. Eleanor's fingers tightened around the hilt of her sword. What do you mean? She demanded, her tone sharp. Lyra's smile was faint, knowing. The prophecy you've been chasing. It's not what you think. Aiden's fate is bound to a power far greater than you realize. Eleanor's breath caught in her throat. What are you talking about? She asked, her voice trembling. Lyra's eyes gleamed with a dangerous knowledge. You've only just begun to understand what you're fighting, and Aiden. She paused, letting the words hang in the air. Aiden isn't just a pawn in your battle, Eleanor. He's the key to the end of this world or its salvation. Kieran's voice cut through the silence. We don't have time for riddles. What do we need to do? But Lyra only smirked. You need to stop asking questions and start making choices. Eleanor's mind raced as the words of the prophecy echoed in her thoughts. Aiden is the key, she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible. Kieran, sensing her confusion, placed a hand on her shoulder. What's happening, Eleanor? What did she mean? Eleanor shook her head, feeling the weight of uncertainty pressing down on her. I don't know, Kieran, she admitted, her voice strained. But I have to find out. I have to know what Aiden's part in this is. Lyra watched them both with a knowing look. The truth is, Aiden has always been more than he appears, she said, her voice cold. What you think you know will crumble when you face the truth. Kieran clenched his fists, frustration growing. Enough with the riddles. If Aiden is the key, then we need to act. We don't have time for games. Eleanor turned to him, her face hardening with resolve. Then we move forward, no matter what we find. The air in the chamber grew thick with tension as Lyra continued to reveal the secrets surrounding Aiden's power. The prophecy is clear, she said softly. Aiden is tied to the fate of the entire realm. His choices will either end the world or save it. Eleanor's heart pounded. What does that mean for him? She asked, voice shaking with fear. Lyra's eyes glinted. It means Aiden's power is uncontrollable, a force that no one, not even him, can fully understand. Kieran stepped forward. We can't just stand here and talk. We need to find him and stop this before it's too late. Eleanor looked between them, her mind torn between fear and determination. If Aiden is the key, then I'll find him, no matter the cost. Lyra tilted her head. Be careful what you wish for, Eleanor. The key may not want to be found. The journey to find Aiden grew darker and more perilous. As they approached the heart of the fortress, Eleanor could feel the pull of magic in the air, thick and suffocating. We're close, Kieran said, his voice low. Too close. Eleanor's nerves were on edge, but her determination outweighed her fear. We'll end this here, Kieran. Whatever happens, we have to stop him. Lyra led the way, her steps confident and assured. You're right, Eleanor, she said, her voice chilling. But the real question is, what will you do when you find him? Will you save him, or will you sacrifice everything? Eleanor's heart tightened. I'll do whatever I must, she said, her voice firm. But I won't lose him. As they rounded a corner, the imposing doors to the inner sanctum loomed ahead. The final confrontation was near. Eleanor stood before Aiden, who was chained to the altar in the center of the chamber. His eyes were wild, his body trembling with uncontrolled magic. Aiden! Eleanor cried, rushing to him. He looked at her with recognition, but there was something distant, something wrong. Eleanor, he whispered, his voice hoarse. You shouldn't have come. You don't know what you're dealing with. Eleanor's heart broke at the sight of him, but she held firm. I'm here to save you, she said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. Aiden shook his head. You don't understand, he rasped. I can't control it anymore. This power, it's too much. Lyra stepped forward, her expression unreadable. He's right, Eleanor. He's beyond saving now. The power within him is too dangerous. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. No, I will save him. I won't give up on him. With that, she stepped forward, reaching out to him, ready to face the ultimate challenge. Eleanor stood before the crumbled ruins of the fortress, the echoes of the battle still lingering in the air. She had won, but at what cost? The sky above her was bleak. The storm now passed, leaving a cold, oppressive silence. Her body ached, but her heart was heavier. Aiden was free, yet the weight of the prophecy loomed over them. We did it, Kieran said, his voice tired but proud as he approached her. Eleanor glanced at him, her eyes filled with a mix of relief and sorrow. We did, she whispered, but the uncertainty remained. What now? Kieran asked, his gaze flicking to Aiden, standing nearby, his face conflicted. Eleanor turned to look at Aiden, the man she had fought for, the man she had loved. Now we rebuild. We rebuild what we've lost, she said softly, her voice resolute. But deep down, she knew that the hardest battles were yet to come. Eleanor and Kieran walked in silence for hours, the weight of their decisions pressing down on them. The world had changed, and so had they. As they reached the edge of the forest, Kieran spoke up, breaking the quiet. Are you sure about this? His voice was low, almost hesitant. Eleanor paused, looking up at the sky as if searching for answers. I don't have a choice. Aiden needs to learn who he is. We all need to. Kieran nodded slowly, understanding the gravity of what she was saying. But can we fix what's broken? He asked. Eleanor turned to him, her gaze unwavering. We can try. That's all we can do. With those words they continued forward, unsure of what lay ahead but determined to face it together. Eleanor and Kieran reached the outskirts of a small village, the soft hum of life contrasting with the weight of their journey. Aiden had fallen silent, lost in his own thoughts, his once chaotic power now subdued. This is where we part ways, Eleanor said, turning to Aiden. He looked at her, his eyes filled with regret. I don't know what to say, he admitted, his voice thick with emotion. Eleanor smiled sadly. You don't have to say anything. You've already done more than you know. Kieran stood quietly by, his face somber. Remember who you are, Aiden, he said, his voice firm yet caring. Aiden nodded, his eyes filled with both gratitude and sorrow. I'll never forget what you did for me. As he turned to walk away, Eleanor felt a pang in her heart, knowing that part of their journey was now over. But the world was still wide open, full of possibilities. As Aiden disappeared into the horizon, Eleanor and Kieran sat at the edge of the village, their bodies exhausted but their spirits still intact. "What now?" Kieran asked, breaking the comfortable silence. Eleanor stared out across the village, her mind reflecting on everything that had happened. "We move forward. We keep going," she said quietly, a sense of finality in her voice. "The world won't wait for us to heal, Kieran. We can't either." Kieran nodded, his expression softening. "I'll follow you wherever you go, Eleanor." Eleanor smiled faintly. "I know. That's what keeps me going." As they sat together, the night stretched on, the stars above them now, a reminder that no matter how dark the past had been, there was always a new beginning. The next day, Eleanor and Kieran set off once again, the path before them uncertain, but the weight of their decisions lighter than before. Eleanor took one last look at the village as they left. "We did what we had to," she said softly, more to herself than to Kieran. "The world won't forget what happened here." Kieran glanced at her. "Nor will we forget what we've lost, but we won't let it define us." Eleanor nodded. "We'll find a way to make things right, together." As they walked into the horizon, the dawn broke, the first light of day casting hope over their path. Whatever came next, they would face it side by side, stronger than before.